your task, which might be a task of compassion or whatever, could be, you might be looking at it as assignment, which is an assignment.
Yes, yes.
Okay, but it is something that is intentional. It's something that is destined for something to happen.
Yes.
So I just needed to explain that at this point, up till now, this man is still an unbeliever.
Yes.
He doesn't know Christ.
He doesn't know. And Jesus was a phenomenon for them. If you think about it, the Jews, they know from their stories, from their scriptures, that a Messiah, a Savior will come. But some of them by this time believed that Jesus was the Messiah. But many didn't. They really didn't know. They just know that there is this man that is going about doing.
There was only one person that knew in this whole thing, that knew, well, besides his disciples. It's just Jesus that knew who he was.
Yes, yes.
The Jews and the Pharisees, they were still in opposition. It's a typical scenario of what happens in today's world.
Yes.
When, you have you have the unbeliever, you have the people that are contending even with what you know. Yeah. Not just that they are silent unbelievers, they are contending with it.
Yes. Yes.
So the assignment that God has given us, by reaching out to that unbeliever who needed our compassion.
Yes.
Okay? It could transcend to the world that is contending against what we know.
Yes.
And what we believe.
Yes.
So,
and so because of the setting that we just described, that they didn't really know who Jesus was. They just knew there was an interesting person, a different person that was around doing things. And as we go through the story, you will find that this man's task, which God divided into small steps for him, was really to begin the process of explaining who Jesus was.
Evangelism.
Yes. And the first step of that was he gained sight. Then the next step, he explained his sight to his neighbors. The neighbors were not satisfied with his explanation. But you will see that something happened there and this wasn't obvious, but we say it now. You will see it later on that a big change occurred in him, that the process of explaining it to his neighbors actually helped him to gain confidence, to understand, to better understand what happened to him, so that he can now boldly discuss it with someone else. Because he was going to boldly discuss, he was going to be challenged. His healing was going to be challenged, and his responsibility really was to stand up to this challenge. So through his discussion with the neighbors, he gained better understanding, became better able to explain, and became less fearful of other people's misunderstanding, other people that might challenge him. So the encounter with the neighbors prepared him for subsequent and more challenging encounters that he's going to have. The encounter with the neighbors is task 2, and then the next encounter is task 3, and let's move on to that. So task 2, as I said, his correct explanation of his sight to his neighbors didn't really satisfy them, so they took him to Jewish authorities. So, okay, you go and tell the authorities, because you see, it involved something, a miraculous work that was done by this man that they knew, but they know that they were supposed to not know in a way. The authorities did not want them to glorify this man. So because what happened to their neighbor, to this man that used to be blind, has something to do with Jesus, they didn't want to just stop with talking to him. They said, okay, you come and explain to the authorities. It's like saying, go and give yourself up. That kind of thing. So they took him to the authorities, and we will see the interaction where he interacted boldly with the Pharisees. Of course, they didn't expect his explanation, and eventually they expelled him. But let us look at the details. Well, who are the Pharisees, the authorities they took him to? These are the teachers of the law. But more important is that they were the Jewish leadership, were the Pharisees and Sadducees, and the leadership was an arm, or rather the church leadership and society leadership were one and the same. So the authority rested with these Jewish leaders that were called Pharisees. Their problem is they did not believe that Jesus was the Messiah. And these people have incredible knowledge of the scriptures. They know everything that Isaiah wrote. They know everything about Moses and all the laws of Moses. They knew all this. They knew there would be a Messiah. They believed it, but they didn't believe that Jesus was the Messiah. Well, more important, they would punish anybody that believed. They would go out of their way to give stiff punishment. In fact, at this particular location, they had a rule that whoever believed in Jesus as the Messiah will be driven out of the synagogue, will be expelled from the synagogue. They had that rule. And you can see what is happening is that they protected, they were the people went to them for information. They were the knowers of the society, and they wanted to protect that status. They didn't want anything to challenge it. So now comes this man that they called Jesus, that was claiming to know everything and be everything, and they didn't want to accept that. They were against it. Then they enforced the law. An example is the Sabbath law, that you don't work on a Sabbath day, and whoever worked was a sinner, and they punished the person. So the man's third task, as you can see, is to engage the Pharisees and confront them with evidence that Jesus is the Messiah, with physical evidence. The physical evidence being the healing. The fact that somebody that was blind from birth now could see. Somebody that used to be a lowly person, the lowest of society, now was going to stand in the synagogue and teach the teachers. That was his third task. Well, the Pharisees, looking at this man, recognized a dilemma. According to their law, they could call Jesus a sinner because he walked on the Sabbath. But they also knew that a sinner could not have the power of God that he needed to heal this man that was blind from birth. Well, so they were arguing among themselves, which of these, how do they resolve this? Then they asked the man and said, what do you think about this? And the man answered them very simply, just told them and said, well, this is really simple, that he thought the man, he didn't say I think actually, but the Bible just said, he said that Jesus is a prophet. But he was telling them, I said, look, these are all these arguments that you are having, whether he's a sinner or he's not a sinner. The only kind of person that can do the type of thing this man has done is a prophet. So this man is a prophet. Let us read about that, 13 to 17, John chapter 9.
Verse 13 of John chapter 9. They brought him who formerly was blind to the Pharisees. Now it was a Sabbath when Jesus made the clay and opened his eyes. Then the Pharisees also asked him again how he had received his sight. He said to them, He put clay on my eyes, and I washed, and I see. Verse 16, therefore some of the Pharisees said, this man is not from God, because he does not keep the Sabbath. Others said, how can a man who is a sinner do such signs? And there was a division among them. They said to the blind man again, what do you say about him, because he opened your eyes? He said, he is a prophet.
He is a prophet. Well, so that's not the end of his confrontation with the Pharisees. After this argument, the man told them he's a prophet, but they're not happy. They didn't accept that. Then they said, well, how do we really know that this is the man that used to be blind? So they called his parents. And then the parents came and said, hey, this is our son. He was born blind. And now he can see, but we don't know how. We don't know who opened his eyes. His parents at that point realized there is a law, there is an understanding that if you testify about Jesus, if you side with him, you will be driven out of the synagogue. So they didn't want to say this themselves. They said, hey, this is ours. They asked the parents how the man got his sight. The parents said, well, he's of age. You ask him yourself. So they turned to the man, but let us read about this. This one is a long section, so we are selecting, it's 18 to 33, verses 18 to 33, but we're going to read 28 to 33. We urge you to read the rest, because we're hoping that by the time we go through this, you'll be excited enough about this that you go and read it.
So John chapter 9, verse 28. Then they reviled him and said, you are his disciple, but we are Moses' disciples. 29. We know that God spoke to Moses. As for this fellow, we do not know where he is from. The man answered and said to them, why, this is a marvelous thing, that you do not know where he is from. Yet he has opened my eyes. Now we know that God does not hear sinners, but if anyone is a worshipper of God and does his will, he hears him. Since the world began, it has been unheard of that anyone opened the eyes of one who was born blind. 33. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing.
If this man were not from God, he could do nothing. Now, if you go through these verses we've read, one thing you see is the eloquence of the person, this man that was healed from blindness. He's eloquent with the Pharisees. Remember, Pharisees were the leaders of the society, the teachers of the law, the learned people of the society, the people that people went to get the answer for whatever it is. Now look at this man who all his life has been sitting in the dirt, getting alms, asking alms from people. Now in a short time, we don't have a sense of time here, but it looks like something that happened over maybe one day or something. He was catapulted from his lowest of the low to a point where he was educating and challenging and boldly confronting the highest of the high. So this was really the reason I'm explaining this. Remember, we said there is a miracle in every task. This is really the miracle here, that this man has been taken to a position where he will remember when Paul was in Rome. One of the way they described it, that he preached boldly, he preached the gospel boldly. But it took him a long time to get to that level of boldness. this man, his own boldness came to him in a matter of maybe 24 hours, maybe something like that. And he was very effective. Look at that. He said, since the world began, we've never heard of anybody giving sight to somebody that was born blind. He said, if this man was not of God, he could not have done this.
It's so clear that his is a ministry of a witness.
Yes.
When, when God calls you or calls us in his assignment, all he requires, sometimes we feel I'm inadequate. What am I going to say? What am I going to do? You couldn't be sending me to these people. You cannot look. We find excuses of our inadequacy. But all he expects from us is to obey and take the step.
Yes.
And because flesh and blood could not have told this man, giving him this knowledge and wisdom.
No.
And remember, this is coming from an unbeliever.
Yes.
He was an unbeliever.
Yes.
Up till now, all what he's saying, is something that, it could only have been the Holy Spirit. That is bringing this kind of knowledge.
Yeah.
And it's not a head knowledge.
Yeah.
It's not a head knowledge because he referred to, he said, hey, since the world began, we have not heard of, somebody, opening the eyes of the one who was born blind.
Yeah.
But even before that, he said, yes, we know that God does not hear sinners.
Mm-hmm.
But if anyone is a worshipper of God, my God, does his will, God hears him.
Yes.
That's exactly, wasn't that the message of Christ? Isn't that grace? Even though we are sinners, the moment we acknowledge who we are and accept God and begin to worship him, God hears us.
Yes.
So flesh and blood couldn't have told this man what to say. He could only have been, equipped by the Holy Spirit. He could only have been God, that was bringing out what he had to say, giving him the boldness and telling him what to say. And along the line, he was also building up his own spiritual, building up himself spiritually.
Yes.
Because as he's being convinced and convicted in his mind, so he is speaking.
Yes.
And I believe these were the things that made him, when he encountered Christ again, he only needed, who are you? And he said, this is who I am. He said, that settles it. I believe.
Yes. Okay, so this is the end of task 3. Of course, the Pharisees couldn't take it. It wasn't really for them. That's one of the things you see as we go through the account, is that it wasn't for their benefit. Of course, if any of the Pharisees were changed, good for him or her. They were all men. But it wasn't for them, it was for the bystanders, the people that watched the transformation of this man from the lowliest of the low to the highest of the high in a matter of one day, maybe 2 days. So his confrontation with the Jewish authorities was for the benefit of the other people that witnessed it. And they thought about it. In fact, the next verse says that Jesus learned that they kicked him out of the synagogue because people thought and told him and said, here is what happened to that man. Then he looked for the man, found him, and then that's when he had the confrontation with the man, in which the man declared, found out this is the Jesus. Jesus told him who he was, and he believed and worshipped him. And thus began what I believe was his gospel ministry. Of course, we weren't told about that. The Bible story ended here. So you could see the man started with task 1. At the completion of task 1 led to task 2. Completion of task 2 led to task 3. And then completion of task 3, of course, that is his expulsion from the synagogue, his encounter with Jesus, and from that point on, some other tasks that we don't know about. Oh, let us read about this 35 to 39, a lot of reading.
John chapter 9 verse 35. Jesus heard that they had cast him out, and when he had found him, he said to him, "Do you believe in the Son of Man, Son of God?" He answered and said, "Who is he, Lord, that I may believe in him?" And Jesus said to him, "You have both seen him, and it is he who is talking with you." Then he said, "Lord, I believe," and he worshipped him.
Yeah.
And Jesus said, "For judgment I have come into this world, that those who do not see may see, and that those who see may be made blind."
Yeah. This was really leading to another message, another teaching, but essentially this is the end of our teaching, and what we learned is that God designs work for every person, guides the person through the work incrementally, and each increment defines a task. I'm teaching this mechanically, but really you could see that this is a big spiritual experience. You know, the outcome of a task leads to a new task, and an important thing is that there is a miracle in every task. Go through everything you have ever completed, you will see that there is an aspect of it that you accomplished without really, that you could not have accomplished without God's intervention, whether you believe it or you don't believe it.
It's not a question of not believing it. It's a question of when you look at it. Yeah. God, is not a user of people.
Yes.
When He gives us any assignment, it's also for His edification, also for building us up. There's also something in the person. There's something in it for you.
Yeah.
The problem we have oftentimes is that we're looking for tangible material things.
Yeah. Yeah.
When we go beyond looking for the things we can touch and feel, the things we can touch and say, "Oh, it was after I went for that evangelism, I bought this car."
Yeah.
Or it was after I did this, somebody blessed me with a house.
Yeah.
Or this or that.
Yeah.
When we stop looking for those, we see that there is also always something that God gives us, which we need for our life,
yes,
which we need for, the kingdom.
Or we need for the next
or
step.
we need for the next step.
Yes.
That is there,
yes,
for us.
Yes.
There is always something.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be something that we can touch, or something that has to lead to our prosperity, or something that has to be. The moment we stop looking for that, we will see that there is something in every assignment that we have completed in obedience,
yes,
or every guidance or every command that God gave, which we have taken steps to do, and do it cheerfully and in obedience, and do it with faith.
Yeah.
There's always something in it, and we will be able to see it.
Yes. Yes.
This man, first of all he needed was a touch of God.
Yeah.
First, and then, which is, for me, this is like initiation into ministry. All you needed is a touch of God, and then He will guide you through that which He wants you to do. It's not just about the healing of, giving this man sight. It's not just about healing of the blind man,
no,
but it's more about what he was able to do. First of all, giving him his sight was, yes, I need you to be a witness of what you have received.
Yes.
And then, he was now used as an instrument to both the Pharisees and, to the Jews and other people who had seen him. And inside it, he just did not receive his sight. That was not because sight, you don't need your physical sight to enter heaven.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
But what was more important was his salvation,
Yes.
which he received.
Yes.
And he received it and became an instrument in the hands of God.
Yeah.
You know. So what this tells me is that God is an intentional God. There's nothing he does that is just, okay, Jesus was just passing by and then he just said, okay, just go and heal that man.
Yeah.
He's an intentional God. He's for a purpose.
Yes. Yes.
And every task he gives us is for kingdom purpose.
Yes.
We will benefit from it.
Yeah.
Look at the Great Commission. It said, go ye into the world and preach the gospel and make disciples of all men. This is what it is.
Yeah.
Okay. And what we encounter here is typical of what we see in the world that draw a lot of people back. You know, a lot of false believers. It pushes us back. Because especially when you reside in countries where you feel that things are turning upside down. You know, people no longer, you pray, people believe there's no God, people believe all kinds of things. You know, we don't have to be discouraged about that.
Yeah.
Whatever, God makes us witness, he has made it possible and created an avenue. Jesus may not have been able to go and talk to those people at that time, the Jews and the Pharisees.
Yeah.
It wasn't time.
Yeah.
It wasn't time for him to appear before them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
But he used this man to get to them.
To get to them, yes.
This man was used to get to them and to talk to them about who Christ is.
Yeah.
So everything that God does is intentional.
Yeah.
And, like I keep saying, it may be you and you may be Christ in the life of another person. Just like Jesus was the person that ignited this man and started his work. It could also be you who will be that person to ignite the gospel, ignite the work in another person's life.
Yes.
Let's see God in everything around us, even when we're lending a helping hand. On the other hand, we could be us that is being ignited, or we have been ignited and we are just sitting back and not being able to carry out the task, completing the task that has been laid. Many of us were saved not for ourselves.
Yeah.
We were saved not for ourselves. We were saved so that we can continue the work that Christ started. And honestly, this is just seeing this event in another light.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy we got through this. It's really an interesting interaction that occurred in the Bible, and we believe that the Bible doesn't waste words. Every word in the Bible is there to teach us something or to teach us several things.
Yeah, and other thing we have to reiterate here is about the urgency. You touched on it at the beginning. That there is time for every assignment we have been given.
Yes.
There is time. If you look at Christ, he said, that he must start doing the work of him who sent him.
Yes. Yes.
Because a time will come when night falls and
you cannot walk in the night.
If you look at it, he was seeing the time that he will be on the cross.
Yes.
That's not the time that has its own purpose.
Yes, that has its own purpose.
That has its own purpose. That had, remember the thieves that were with him there, how the one was converted and went to heaven with him. So that had its own, but that assignment, some of us are sleeping on it. Some of us are sleeping, There's urgency. There's every assignment that God gives us. He has
a time for it.
And it is earmarked for something.
Yes.
Yes.
It's
for such a time as the time he had given you
Yes.
that assignment.
Yes. In fact, as she says this, you could see really an explanation of the urgency. That time is because these are all connected events, several sequences of events occurring, and something has to occur at a certain time so that the next thing following it will occur. So essentially what God is saying is when you are given work to do, he expects you to finish that work. He gives you time to do the work, and he expects you to finish it within that time, because there's something else that needs your completion to begin. So that there is a connected sequence of events that need to occur, and if one of them doesn't occur in time, well, of course he will find someone else to do it, but for you to complete, you have to complete it in time. Anyway, talking about time, we've taken a lot of it in this Bible study, and we thank you for joining us. Let me finish this. Okay. We thank you for joining us. Thank you for participating in our Bible studies. We thank you for working with us this year. It's been a very eventful year. We've gone through a lot of things, and we pray that our collection of information at the website will be of benefit to you, that you will learn something from there that will make a positive impact on your life and bring you closer to God's purpose for your life. Thank you, and God bless you.
God bless you. Merry Christmas in advance.
Merry Christmas.